Hello and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is Season 2, Episode 14, Fiasco, Second Edition. A game of small town capers, powerful ambition, and poor impulse control. The first edition was a massive hit in indie role-playing games, and the second edition, there's a lot to say about it. It's quite different in a lot of ways, but it at its core, this is remains a game of the Coen brothers movies like Fargo and Raising Arizona. It's like that. That's the elevator pitch I tell people when I'm trying to get them to play the game. I am interested in this discussion because I found quite a bit to talk about in this game. So,
okay.
Yeah, with me as always is Greg Stolze and James Wallace. So. James, yeah. What are your what does the game do?
The game essentially boils down. It's not the 3-act structure of movies. It's a 2-act structure. It provides a meta structure. I'm already into how it does it, aren't I? I've got ahead of myself. What it does is it provides you a backbone, essentially, for storytelling, and then sets. In the originals, these were just documents. In second edition, they are actual card sets with which you can create characters, create the interrelationships between these characters, and then play out a story in which inevitably they get in over their heads, usually in some kind of scheme or caper if you're playing one of the crime-based sets. And tensions explode, things go horribly wrong, some or all fail to make it out. And it is tonally, it's very like, I would say actually more like some of the Coen's earlier works. Yeah. People getting in over their heads.
Blood Simple.
Blood Simple, that is the name I was grasping for. It's very like that. There's a Sam Raimi movie as well where
A Simple Plan.
A Simple Plan. People find a great deal of money in a crashed aircraft and think they can get away with it. Spoiler, they can't. It's that kind of thing. It's brilliantly put together. It's by Jason Morningstar. Who is a fantastic designer. He's one of very, very few people. I think it's him and the late Greg Stafford who have won the Diana Jones Award twice. His first win was for Grey Ranks, which is an extraordinarily depressing thing in the Siege of Stalingrad, I think, and this was the second. But Fiasco is at its heart almost a generic engine for this type of plot. It plays to completion in 2 hours. It's for 3 to 5 players. It was featured on Will Wheaton's tabletop and is therefore probably the biggest selling indie role-playing game of the last couple of decades.
Yeah, the first edition came out, I want to say 2 years ago. Yeah, 2008, yeah. And the second edition was Kickstarted, I believe, in 2019.
Was it 2000? I think it was 2008.
Yeah. The first edition was just a book, like a regular RPG, but the second edition, you mentioned the card set, it comes in a box like a board game. In fact, it has a little board. There's several decks of cards. You need 2 decks of cards to run the game. One is called the engine deck, and that is used for all games. And then you have a playset deck, which has a series of cards over a particular themed setting. There are 3 in the starter box, and then there are additional decks you can buy as expansions. In fact, on Role Playing Public Radio Actual Play, we did an actual play of it with Tales from Suburbia, which is... very Coen Brothers
X, was hilarious. Just the period when the cat sounds started, I'm like, oh god, this is that and I will destroy her mind, body, and soul. Talking about a one-on-one charity grudge extreme lacrosse match. So, strong recommend.
I had a lot of fun with the first edition, but the first edition had structural problems with the rules, at least for me, in that I read the rules of first edition and I still didn't understand them, so I could never facilitate a game. This is a GM-less game, but it helped tremendously if there's one player sort of driving the rule structure and sort of making sure the phases of the game are happening properly, a facilitator.
just to drop in, it also helps if the players are familiar with storytelling games.
Yeah.
Not necessarily role-playing games. So games in which they are free to make up stories. Stories in which their characters are not necessarily expected to survive.
Yeah.
Or do well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, part of it, Fiasco forces you into scuzzy, fail-prone characters. It's a little bit like character generation in Dread, and a little bit of that Merkborg thing of being too overblown for full empathy bleed sometimes. But it deprotagonizes you a little. It's like, no, your choices are very confined. You are not going to be able to just walk away and make wise choices in this game, because
that's not what the game's about.
Yeah, that would be like playing Call of Cthulhu and saying, well, I'm not, that monster sounds scary, I'm not going to go in there.
I'm not, my uncle gave me a mansion, I'm not going to go. I'm just going to have someone sell it for me.
Your character is not you, your character is not your mask, your character is a puppet. You are manipulating this character, not really caring. It'd be nice if they did well, but it's fine if they do badly, as long as that's entertaining.
I mean, that's if you sympathize with your character. Sometimes you play a scumbag in Fiasco, and that's the point. You're like, yay, the bad guy got punished, because I did all these horrible things. I should have a bad ending, and that's part of the fun, obviously.
So two things that, two sort of related or associated media. I've found a television show streaming on Peacock that I think is the perfect Fiasco. It's like Fiasco the series. It's called Killing It.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got your desperate losers with very powerful needs. Our protagonist just wants $20,000 to start a saw palmetto berry farm in Florida, because his research suggests that, there's a tremendous unmet demand for saw palmetto berries to shrink the prostate. And in order to do this, he winds up becoming a wildlife removal agent, where his job is he gets paid by the snake to kill invasive boa constrictors. And there is this competition.
I have seen this. It's great.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about a drama. It's a comedy.
Oh, it is very much a comedy.
Yes. And you don't sympathize with the characters.
I'm not going to test out a bulletproof vest you got off Kickstarter. It's good.
Yeah.
The opening of, I think it's the last episode, is like the hardest I've laughed in probably a decade.
And that's kind of the goal of Fiasco, I think, is to get everyone at the table. Yeah, is the laugh. It's dark things, but it's black comedy, like
the Coen brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I was going to bring up I think Morningstar's first game was the Shabalhiri Roach, right? And so now he's back to cards.
Mm-hmm.
And Shabalhiri Roach, you can kind of see the Fiasco tendencies at play there. How familiar are you guys with it?
I know of it, but I've not read or played it.
Okay. The premise of Shabalhiri Roach is that you are all academics at this college and trying to get tenure. And one of your colleagues has brought back this devil insect from the Middle East. And if you eat the roach, it will grant you power over your peers, and the mechanics are such that if you're trying to do pretty much anything, you've got like a 40% chance of success, as I recall it. But once you take the roach, that goes up to like a 70% chance of success.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you've been roached, periodically you have to draw from this deck of commands in which the roach gives you stuff out of Babylonian myth to perform on this straight-laced New England college campus in like the 1920s. And so it's like, bend your enemy to your will, force him to kneel in subjugation. And it's like, okay, what does this mean within the context of the history department? And it's got this even more concrete, far more concrete than Fiasco, set of events where it's, now that I think about it, it was probably an inspiration for Dueling Fops, where, Fops starts with a dance, ends with a contest, has a ball in the middle. Shab el-Hiri Roach has it's like, okay, we start with commencement and then we go through these separate events, at each of which your characters are trying to get things done. And at any point, you can abase yourself before the Roach in order to gain the power to achieve your goals. And as I recall, it's possible to get rid of the Roach, but not easy. And so the strategy is always, okay, I'm going to roach up early and then try and barf it out at the last scene so that I get all the advantages, but don't have to pay the piper at the end. Which, as you can see, is a very Fiasco approach to things.
Yeah, Jason Morningstar has done a lot of games. I think there's one called Winterhorn, which was about a leftist organization that had a FBI informant or infiltrator or like some extremist organization in dealing with the aftermath of that. It's kind of it seems to be a specialty, and I quite enjoy these kind of games when done right. So something to explore in other episodes, perhaps. But in Fiasco, I remember in first edition, like I'd mentioned, it being awkward because you had pools of dice that had to be two separate colors, and you would allocate them varying methods and then look up various things on tables. And in second edition, the biggest thing has been now everything is done through these decks of cards. There's no dice involved anymore.
And there's about 50 cards per deck. I haven't actually counted them, I must admit.
Yeah, I actually did. I did count them. I believe it's 50, straight 52. Maybe 53 if there's because some of the decks have come with blank cards for you to add in your own things. So, and I haven't counted the engine deck, which is a separate thing. So, the basic process of the game involves, first you pick a set, one of the play sets. You divide the entire playset deck equally among however many players there are. They recommend 3 to 5, although there are rules for doing it for more players. I would not see this being possible with 2 players, though, because of the nature of this game is characters are bouncing off each other, and there's a web of tangled relationships. And if it's just 1v1, and it really is adversarial in a degree because characters are scheming. It's not inherently adversarial, but like every game of Fiasco I have played, characters are fall into conflict with each other. Yeah.
It will not run really smoothly if you all are agreeing to help one another with your goals like a troop of Girl Scouts.
This is not a co-op game.
The cards are structured to create, limited resources that everyone wants, but only one of you can have. And I think it's very deliberate that it sets you at one another's throats.
Yeah. And that's where the drama and the conflict and really the heart of the story comes from, is the players in conflict with each other, or their player characters in conflict with each other. The characters,
the players, one hopes not. This is not a game that in no way is this designed to put the players against each other. You're safe within the magic circle. You have all agreed that your characters probably deserve to have horrible things happen to them. And it's interesting, the examples of play they give for character generation are very much about the players laughing at how horrible their characters are and what a great time they're going to have, forcing them against each other's throats. And I've talked a lot about the importance of examples of play giving the tone for a game. And I think Fiasco, because the rule book, the original rules, first edition, was 130 odd, I think it was 128 pages.
These are pretty thin, yeah.
This one's 24. And that's including the cover and, and it's big type and a lot of white space.
It's like a board game.
Yeah, it could have been 23.
Yes.
If they hadn't had the future conditional so frequent and prominent, it made my gorge rise. And that's all I'll say about that.
Okay.
Excellent. His clockworks ran down early this time. The first edition was very much, it looked like a role-playing.
You say that like it's not bad, James, and James, you know it's bad. If those columns were unbalanced, we would...
It is
a single column layout. It's fine. I'm very happy with it. The first edition looked and felt like a role-playing game, or something derived very much from a role-playing game. It was very dice-based. And although the second edition is structurally very similar, the structure of the stories it tells and the mechanics it uses to do it are very similar. Simply replacing dice and tables with cards, it doesn't feel like a role-playing game. You are role-playing, but in terms of its packaging, in terms of the fact it comes with a board and card decks and all the rest, and the way it's positioned, it does not feel like a role-playing game. And I will come on to this, I think, later on, rather than doing my kind of exposition on why I think that is now.
I do want to mention, I'm very interested in hearing about that, but I do want to mention another type of card I've neglected to mention yet, which is the Let's Not card. So this is sort of like, obviously, if you want to see how role-playing game design has changed since first edition and second edition of Fiasco, you can only look at these. So the Let's Not is essentially their version of an X card, which means you place a Let's Not card, or you give every player one. They have several cards, and every player, whenever they come into an element in the game that they don't want to, they can tap the card, and everyone backs out. And obviously, in Fiasco is pretty open in a lot of play sets referencing, like sexual relationships. It's
a 14 plus game.
It's a 14 plus game, and but if you don't want to say oh, well, I'm going to be flirted with your character, I'm going to make a reference to this thing, and you can always tap the card and say no, let's not.
You don't have to give a reason. It's just you don't get that. And it's interesting because Let's Not is a much gentler tone than X card. X card is like, no, we shall not. This territory is forbidden. Nothing good, nothing of value is stored here. Whereas Let's Not is kind of, we're all in agreement here.
A gentle nudge.
It's a gentle nudge. I was going to talk about remind me of a board game called Paku Paku it's an Antoine Bowser game in which you're pandas stacking piles of crockery for reasons. And if it goes wrong, the other players turn to you and go, oh, Paku, no. And it's the gentleness. Really makes a difference. Tonally, again, this stuff is important. It does change your approach to it, the way you feel about stuff. I think the Let's Not card is really nicely handled within this, and an important part of the play, because the players need to be comfortable with the story.
Oh yeah,
right.
For sure.
I mean, this is something I've said before and put in texts is, if you want to keep a sharp knife, you need to have a good sheath. And that this is the good sheath is, okay, we have very clear we have a very clear procedure for when someone's like, this has stopped being the good kind of out there and is getting just the bad kind of wild. And, it's like, and there's an agreement that, okay, we all back off. It's your edgelord prophylaxis.
I love that term. So in the playset deck, there are 5 types of cards. One is the kicker card, which has little prompts to get the ball rolling for the story. But then there's 4 types of cards: relationships, needs, objects, and locations. And during the setup phase, you set a relationship between each 2 pairs of characters. So the player to your left, the player to your right, you'll have a relationship to them. And then you will attach a need, object, or location. And there's a rules to how this is allocated, and everyone gets a turn at setting. And you don't have to set up your own relationship, your modify relationship. You could say, oh, those 2 players are, exes, or they're college roommates, or they're whatever. And so that's how the game begins. I think so. I guess we're now at how the game does what it does.
So, okay, this is something we got into this yesterday a little bit when we were talking about How I Designed Termination Shock. And,
on Role Playing Public Radio, which you can listen to now, Game Designers Workshop.
And the idea that I'm thinking of it as left brain and right brain, right? Mm-hmm. And so the left brain is the one that's supposed to be all logic and reason and cold mathematics, and the right brain is all loosey-goosey and associative and artistic. And I'm thinking of, most simulationist games particularly lean towards the left brain approach, where it's like, okay, so our randomizers are dice, they are numbers, and in this situation, the D6 is how much damage your mace does, but in this situation, it's what the weather's like when you are climbing the mountain. The D6 has no flavor of its own. It just points to flavors on charts or flavors within situations where, oh, I did a bunch of damage with my mace. Oh, I didn't do very much damage with my mace. Whereas, and this is sort of summed up in the crunch versus fluff concept, where people are like, oh, I like a game with a lot of crunch and not a lot of fluff, by which I mean that it should have the combat chapter should be half the book, and the setting just tells me the names of the cities I can loot. And, what Fiasco does, and what a lot of story games do, is that it is moving into more of the right brain, where it's like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you, the answer to your question is not 10. The answer to your question is a beautiful vintage Porsche that you cannot get the corpse smell out of the trunk because Louis was in there for 3 months in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an object in Fiasco.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. So each player gets like a 4 or whatever percentage. So they have a very large hand of like 8 to 13 cards or whatever, and it's divided randomly between these 4 types. But each card has like a sentence on it, right? Like, or a word. Like it's just like a gun, or what are some examples in the book? To get even with the local drug dealer, or a location, a West End on the T Esquire Kid, so like a store in a mall. So it's like it's very, very open ended and very loose.
They're story prompts essentially, in the same way that we were talking about in the RPGs that use cards episodes. They're there for the players to flesh out, to give essentially hooks to then hang more story on. On their own, they're not terribly interested. It's the detail that the players put on them and the associations and the links to other bits of the story that the players are good at, because the human mind is really good at, because we are story-making machines. We see 2 things. We make a connection between them. That's a story. The cards are structured, because Morningstar is a great designer, in a way that naturally suggests links and interesting connections that are within genre.
Mm-hmm. Well, and my notes were all pieces point to woe and bad choices, but you add the special sauce of assembly, like those cooking shows with limited ingredients. What hell broth will you make of adulterers in a messy breakup, the needle exchange, and a sack of $20 bills stained with blood and white powder?
In our playthrough of it, like roaming packs of feral cats became an integral story element, and there was something referencing a dangerous animal or something like that, but that was it. Like we really brought that to life. So
have we actually talked about the structure yet? Because I think the structure is important, talking about how it does it.
We went into setup, but that's it.
Let me run through this very quickly. You do set up, you do your character generation, you kick off the story, then there is Act 1, which consists of a number of scenes. Each player creates 2 scenes. You go round twice. Then there is I'm blanking on the name of it. The twist. The tilt. The bit in the middle. If you're into story structure, theory, and the master of this, I mentioned screenplay, Sid Field's Screenplay was the book that introduced the concept of the 3-act structure, and also the concept of the midpoint reversal. the point in the middle of the story where everything kind of flips upside down, it's now part of standard screenplay. Once you know to look for a midpoint reversal, or indeed act breaks within a screenplay, you will find them. But the tilt is absolutely the midpoint reversal. Then you run through Act 2, which is, where everything goes downhill. Again, the same number of scenes using the cards. That sounds flip, but essentially, the player who's seen it decides whether they are going to do the setup or whether they're going to do the execution of the scene. If they do the setup, and the other players bring the scene to a close, or vice versa. Also, I should say at this point, I was not able to bring the game to table. I've played first edition a while ago. I was not able to play second edition, and I will come on to that when I'm talking about why second edition feels different.
The player who is up has the choice of framing the scene and saying so if you frame the scene, it's, okay, my guy and Francine meet at the public pool, and we're going to talk about what to do with all those dead Dalmatians. And if you're not
obvious,
make coats. And if you are not framing the scene, your generous fellow players are the ones who decide where you go and what you're doing, but you decide whether it plays out well for you or poorly.
Yeah. And because at the end of each scene, you get essentially a positive or a negative card. And the whole point of the game is to get at the end, every player will get the same number of positive, or a total of positive and or negative cards. And at the end, and each of these positive cards has a number attached to it. And then at the end of the game, you tally them up, positive versus negative, and whatever number is higher, they subtract from each other. And then you get an ending based on your final score, essentially. And basically,
yes, judgment and aftermath.
Yeah. And the closer to 0 you are, the worse it is. So you want ideally all of one type or the other. So everything could go horribly for your character during the game, get nothing but negative things. But then if you get a very high negative score, it turns out a lot better than if you've gotten one positive point. Even in the best case scenario, I haven't looked at all the ending aftermath cards, but usually it's you're about the same as you were, maybe a little better off, but it's
no, you can get really
okay.
good.
Oh, okay.
When we played it, I played it with my kids, and had drug deals and Satanism at the local pretzel store in the mall. And I think I misunderstood or misinterpreted how to do the cards and how we were amassing them and when, because we all wound up with great outcomes where it's just we did all these crimes, then we skated off into the sunset on our rollerblades with our Oakley shades, listening to hip-hop music.
The numbers on each card is kept secret, but there's some that are worth 1 point, there's some that are worth 5 or 6 points. So if you get several of those 6-point cards, then your character's just going to have a very, much more biased score at the end than if you'd gotten my character got nothing but positive cards at the end, but they were all worth 1 or 2 points. So I think my final score is 4 or 5.
Womp womp.
And so it turned out horribly. 5 is not really great for your character.
All right, so, I'm gonna throw this out there.
Mm-hmm.
Would this be better if the outcomes at the end, if the aftermath was just 100% random? You just, okay, we've played through this elaborate thing where you're scheming and angling and doing this, and now we're going to shuffle this 10-card deck, and you're going to pull one card, and it's going to tell you your future. And I'm that would almost feel more in character for this kind of story for me, that, it's oh, well, I tried to do everything right and be a good person, and I struggled and overcame a bunch of things, and my life's crap.
Well, there is a thing at the end, right before you resolve the thing, where you can exchange a card, so you can spike player results to a degree. Take one of their if they all have negative or positive cards, give them one of the other cards to, get their score closer to 0. But I think that would defeat a lot of the games that gives you a focus for the game is like you're trying to get like if you're a quote unquote min-maxer, or a competitive game, you're like, I want nothing but positive or I want nothing but negative because I want to get that high score, right? So like if it was entirely randomized, then I don't think it would be as narratively satisfying to play.
But it's already hugely random because you're going to end up with like 3 cards. You could end up with a 1, a 1, and a 2, all negative, and it's like, okay, I'm at -4. Or you could wind up with a -6 and 2 positive ones, and it's like, oh, I'm at the same -4. So,
I mean, that's also like thematically for like a Coen Brothers thing is that like who gets rewarded and punished is it's not like just. It's an unjust world. It's a chaotic world.
Yes, but you have to feel there's a reason for it. It's not typically random that someone like some movies do in the white on black text that comes up after the final fade, going, so and so was arrested, and the police found a joint in his car, and he served 13 years for whatever it is. I think this is one of the places where the cards help because the cards are very visual. Some of them stay out on the table, so they remind you of stuff that has been in the story before. So it's that much easier to do callbacks to them. So items recur during the story. You get thematic links between stuff, and it's kind of, oh no, I could have had a brilliant, but oh no, the cigarette butt. I think the second edition does that slightly better than the first edition, simply because cards. Because cards.
It's way better than looking up tables.
Exactly. Yes, you look up something on a table, you forget it. But it can be random. But I think if you're in the flow of story construction, you will turn that random. You will find reasons for that random decision to have happened, and it will become part of the narrative rather than feeling tacked on and abrupt.
I mean, I think like in our playthrough, like the person who had the best ending was someone who murdered someone at the very end, and like, that makes sense in this kind of place, but like the two people, my character and my rival, we had this match. We were both ruined by it. Mine through using illegal drugs to boost my performance, and the other one because I got waylaid by their various schemes. I don't remember the details exactly, but I think. The thing is, this game is perfect for me and my friends. It is a vast improvement from the first edition of Fiasco. I feel like I'm going to run this anytime we're like, hey, you want to do something? Well, I don't want to feel like prepping. Let's bust out Fiasco and play that for a couple hours. The thing that I realized, though, is especially with its packaging and its board game design, it's very like it rules booklet like a board game. I feel like the only challenge with this game, my main criticism is more of this feels like they're aiming at an introductory market or introductory players. Like this is something that anyone from very experienced players to very new players can enjoy. And
I'm gonna jump in here. I think I know specifically the market they're aiming at because the original Fiasco, and this is, a decade ago now, it was on Will Wheaton's tabletop, which at the time had viewership around 500,000. Or I think built up to 500,000 an episode. I know from experience that if one of your games was on tabletop, you sold out a print run. And I'm not talking like 2,000 or 3,000 copies. I think we sold. I probably shouldn't say this. There's probably something in my contract that says I shouldn't talk about. We blew through a Once Upon a Time print run when it was on tabletop, which it was in excess of 10,000 copies. It was just like gone. It was an amazing market force. And one of the people who took them was Target. We're talking about big mall stores, which is kind of ironic given that the Poppleton Mall is one of the card sets in second edition.
Yeah.
God, I want that to happen to Merkborg now.
Still might. But the thing is, 132 page or 128 page softbound digest size role-playing game essentially is not enormously target friendly. I don't know because there aren't many targets within about 3,000 miles of where I am.
Yeah, they don't sell many books. Yeah.
it doesn't really work for them. Whereas you look at second edition, that is a very shelf-friendly package. And I'm talking about not your traditional game store. I'm talking bookstores and places like Target. And increasing numbers of high street stores and mainstream stores are stocking board games. Over here, it's just been announced that Waterstones, which is the dominant bookstore chain, and yes, we still have one, they've had little cafe areas for a while, and they've been doing board games for quite a while. They did role-playing games in the 80s and 90s, shifted slowly into board games, have increased their board games presence. They're going to be converting some of those cafes into board game cafes.
Oh.
This is a high street store. This is a dominant chain. And it's not every store, but still, that's
But of
remarkable.
course, if you try to play a role-playing game in those board gaming areas, you'll be asked to leave.
They sell D&D. They sell the D&D books. They sell the D&D introductory sets. They sell the Adventures Awake board game, which is pretty decent.
That's certainly an exception, but
Yeah. My point is, Fiasco is a very high street friendly, mass market friendly product. It is positioned very well. The other thing is, it was kickstarted. It took $250,000 on Kickstarter, I believe, or thereabouts. And you look at it
that feels low.
Yeah, but you look at it on Drive-Thru RPG, second edition. First edition is an adamantine seller. That's the top level they have. There is no way of knowing exactly what that number is, but it is high. Second edition, which has been up for, I think, a couple since 2010, and it's an Electrum level. That's about 300 copies. That's not. I think that's 300 to 500. That's not strong. So it's not selling. And admittedly, that would be a PDF copy, but it's not selling to the hobby level.
It's not designed to be. It's not PDF friendly.
No.
Yeah.
If they'd really busted their humps and got it through drive-through cards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think you're wrong that they're like, okay, let's try and push this into the bookstore market. I mean, man, why would you not want to do that? Why would you be like, no, we're going to keep this on drive-through, and, we'll have a little print version for all those game stores that have somehow managed to stay open. That's not a wise business decision.
My criticism of this is that, this is meant as a very mainstream it's marketed as a mainstream audience, right? As you describe. But like, it's really not like an absolute introductory game. I feel like there is this sort of like skill floor that you would need. And the skill that you really need to do Fiasco is the ability to improvise and adapt and role play, and which is not like, I've had experiences like where I was teaching people who are new to role playing games, had only a handful of sessions, and we tried to do a storytelling game where you had to make up things like on the fly, and I've had like at least in one case, a person just like literally stopped and like had an anxiety attack because they couldn't come up with something. They couldn't understand how I came up with a thing. Yeah. And so we just like, okay, we're going to stop. I don't want it, like,
I've seen that happen with Once Upon a Time, which is specifically designed as a mass market. Well, it's designed as an introductory, kid-friendly product. Yeah, some people...
let's phrase it this way. Some people do not possess that skill, but develop great anxiety over the idea of executing the skill action incorrectly.
Yeah.
Because a large part of improv is just a willingness to jump out of the plane with the presumption that you'll figure out the parachute sometime between exit and impact.
Right.
You have to embrace the chaos, and a lot of people don't like chaos that way.
And also, when I speak specifically for British market here, they don't want to look foolish.
Oh, man.
You don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
As soon as you care about not looking foolish, your improv is doomed.
Well, I would say role play generally. I mean, story games generally. The moment you... And I've seen people falter at the idea of role-playing games. Rolled up a character, had great fun with that, and then the moment it comes to enter the action, they freeze.
Yeah. And like, but in games like Dungeons and Dragons or more traditional role playing games, there's this procedural element, this sort of war game or board game esque where
structure,
how do you do a thing? Okay, what is our goal? Our goal is to fight the monsters and get the treasure. Okay, well, I will attack the monster. Here's how you attack a monster: you roll this die, you lift this number, blah blah blah.
And this may be why these games became so violent, why combat is so core, because it's like, I don't know what to do. I will take this to the lowest common denominator where I know I can roll dice and respond to their outcomes.
Right.
Also, and it's the same in video games, combat is very easy to model mechanically. Human interrelationships are not.
Right. That is true. And yeah, so when you no longer have that safety of like, I am a fighter in a dungeon fighting monsters, that is easier to understand versus, or even I'm like in the sci-fi setting, or I'm in this crazy setting, but I know that my character does these things and it's like a board game, which I like playing and blah, blah, blah. But like in Fiasco, the cards are so brief. There's so much white space. There's so much.
All right. Yeah. This is a concept I talk about, with writing, is that you want to leave a hole for the audience, right? You do not want to hold the reader's hand throughout the entirety of your novel or short story and say, and now you feel this, and this character comes in and we don't like him. And that if you leave things ambiguous, people become more emotionally invested because they're like, wow, that was a tough decision he made, and I wouldn't have jumped that way. I think I would have taken the problems but solutions of the other option, and you have an opinion about whether someone is good or bad, if we want to use these morally charged terms. And similarly, Fiasco leaves tremendous space for you. It's like, okay, well, we know you're at the tanning salon with the bloodstained sneakers, but are you planning to try and, what are you trying to do with them? Are you going to come clean and admit your involvement, but that you didn't actually kill the guy? Are you going to try and clean them up? Are you going to try and blame someone? Are you going to try and, there are all these options. And when you give people a lot of options, some people thrive in an option-rich environment, especially if they're not afraid of doing the wrong thing. Some people become task-saturated and just get paralyzed. Now, I will say, I like the idea of Fiasco as an entry-level gaming product, and that this is going to fall into the hands of some players who have never played any kind of role-playing game together, and instead of their default concept of role-playing being, because I am an elf, I will shoot the orc with my bow. Their default concept of role-playing will be, I am going to do something wild and desperate that will make the other players laugh or be interested. I'm cool with that.
If you've done like any improv or taken creative writing class or exercise any of those kind of creative storytelling skills, you'd be fine with Fiasco. But
if you're just that kind of nerd. I mean, there are probably 14-year-olds out there, we'll go 15, 16-year-olds, who still remember playing Let's Pretend as children, who are going to fall on Fiasco like a dog on a dropped ham. This is going to be extremely their jam.
Yes.
And it rhymes, so it's true.
Yeah, they'll take one look at the D&D rule books and, hundreds and hundreds of pages of rules, which a very particular type of nerd, and I was that nerd, will embrace that and just decide, I must master this. I must understand this system and be its controller. And then there are others for whom a 16-page, beautifully laid out, the layout and design of the physical design of this whole thing is absolutely gorgeous. It's very post-Saul Bass, the great movie title and graphic designer, but becomes, I think, in this edition, its own thing. It feels kind of grown up. It encourages you to take risks, and sometimes those risks will pay off. It doesn't hold your hand, which I think is a problem in an introductory game. But I said I'd come round to why I failed to get it to the table, which feeds into a lot of the way I feel about this edition, which is that the first edition looked like a role-playing game and felt like a role-playing game. And this edition isn't quite sure what it is, or it knows what it is, but it has a problem communicating that. And I'm going to go right back to, I think, 1983 or 1984, and the first time I saw Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective on the shelf. I don't know if you know it.
I don't.
It has become one of the great classic. It predates most of the murder mystery dinner party games. It is a cooperative murder mystery solving, very text-based thing. Came out originally from Sleuth Publications, who also did a brilliant follow-up called Gumshoe, which is hard-boiled mystery solving. Disappeared for about 20 years and was brought back by the French company Istari and is now one of the jewels in Asmodee's crown. And there are endless sequels. There's a Cthulhu variant. It's a masterpiece.
Of course there is.
But my friend Caleb has played it. Yeah, he's told me a lot
it's
about it.
It's great stuff. And it's essentially, it's a solo game book, but with props and stuff and a clever system where you can look up references. Let's street references and particular people within the background. It's really nicely done. I remember seeing this on the shelf of a game store in 83, 84. I'd been in my late teens, and I was interested, but I could not work out what it was, because it clearly wasn't a board game, and it wasn't a role-playing game, and I couldn't categorize it, and I couldn't work out kind of how it played, and it was talking about telling stories and solving mysteries, but I couldn't work out how you would do that, and it was quite expensive, and so I never bought it, to my great regret. Now, I think Fiasco in this edition has the same problem, that it is not clear to people who are not already familiar with Fiasco what it is from the package. And
if you looked at that box, you're like, this could be a party game where I'm going to wind up sticking my thumbs in my armpits and making chicken noises.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It could. Yeah, it does have that party game vibe, yeah.
It does. Yeah. And then you see 3 to 5 players, which is not, 2 to 4... 2 to 6, those are friendly numbers. 3 to 5 is kind of specific. And the game doesn't work at 2 and it doesn't work at 6. But that's not a commercial number. And 2 hours of playtime, most party games, even most hobby games these days, kind of entry level, even low end of the hobby, that's 45 minutes. It's an hour these days is unusual. I'm speaking from a commercial end. But the other thing is trying to get it to the table. My regular playtest group couldn't meet for whatever reason, so I went to regular board game friends, and they were kind of, maybe. And I went to role play friends, and they were like, I don't think so. And I took it to UK Games Expo, and I asked a couple of groups of friends, and they were kind of, but 2 hours.
Wow.
And I could not get it. And I asked my family as well, and again they were kind of, and my 13-year-old. I realize that is below the recommended minimum age, but she's advanced. And, she plays in a D&D campaign, and my wife is a screenwriter. If anyone is, familiar with the 3-act structure, with meta stories and story structure and improvising within that space, and they were just, no, I don't think so. So that I couldn't get people to play it, because I think it's a hard game to define. It's a hard game to explain to people what it is and why it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to ask you to do an impression of your daughter saying, "I'd rather not, Dad." In her eye,
she was much more. There was eye rolling involved. She communicates a great deal with the eyes, because she usually has her headphones in.
Yeah.
Nobody can communicate contempt like a teenage girl, in my experience.
Absolutely. I've just given her a new set of polyhedral dice as well. I mean, what does one have to do as a parent?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't need them for the game, so
it's true. Yeah.
That's interesting.
So do you feel that Fiasco has evolved itself into a corner where, it looks way too mainstream for jaded role players who are like, yes, I was over D&D years ago, and now I can only find enjoyment in games where I play an abstract shape moving through a 2-dimensional landscape. but it's still, people who are like, wait, it's not Monopoly? I can't be the little Scotty dog? No. It scares me.
I think it's gone back possibly to where role-playing games were in the 80s and 90s. Word of mouth transmission. I think people will talk to each other about it, or we'll talk about it on the internet, or we'll listen to excellent podcasts about it, and we'll go, that sounds interesting. I don't know exactly what this experience is going to be, but it sounds like it's going to be fun.
Excellent internet content providers like me and Will Wheaton will present this game to people.
Yes. Me and Will, we're like that, which is to say, every couple of years I send him an email and he sends me a one-line reply.
Oh, was that your name drop for the episode?
I think that's a plink. It's. I mean, it is a crying shame that Will Wheaton's tabletop no longer exists, because what it was doing for the profile of the hobby when it came out was extraordinary and catapulted a number of small companies to being mid-range companies almost overnight, and made gaming. You look at those boxes in stores, and I don't mean just Fiasco, and they are intimidating, but you see Will Wheaton, who is open and approachable and clearly understands fun, and he explains the games to you and why they're fun, and suddenly you get it. And I think he brought literally millions of people into the hobby. So it is...
He's been replaced by Matt Mercer.
Yeah, and it's...
I mean, am I wrong?
I'm going to blow the trumpet of the Diana Jones Award, with which I am no longer associated. I said it, I ran it for 20 years, I'm no longer involved. But we gave the award to Fiasco, we gave it to Jason twice, we gave it to Will Wheaton for tabletop, and we gave it to the actual play movement. And we were derided for it. But that has transformed the hobby in a way that nothing has since collectible card games, maybe, in 93. How often does lightning strike? Maybe every 20 years. I think we were absolutely bang on to give it to the actual play movement. And when I say we, I mean the anonymous jury that I was privileged to... I didn't lead them. I added up the votes, mostly, and told them when to start voting and when to stop.
Okay.
Actual play has been an extraordinary thing. And I think if a podcast wanted to start, doing weekly sessions of Fiasco with different play sets, or even with the same play set but different characters each time, you could build very quickly an amazing extended universe of Coen Brothers style plots and characters and situations and places. And I think it could be fascinating.
But would it be lucrative? Because, everything's made of money and PR these days. Yeah. Money, PR, or if you don't have those things, bitterness. Which, there's a Fiasco vibe right there for you.
Resentment, yeah. Massive plot driver. But I think, for GMs to play a game like this in between regular role-playing sessions as well, you start learning an awful lot about creating interesting NPCs on the fly, or characters developing emotions and ongoing character traits, and how they can affect stories in interesting ways. It's a really interesting take on, it's using conventional story structure ideas, but in a way that most role-playing and storytelling games don't.
I mean, it is way off in the right brain. It's like charting a new end for the right brain approach, and I'm here for it. I think gaming as a field, I'm like, it has been very left brain for a long time, and the right brain is now coming into its own. It was always there, but it has stopped being the bridesmaid and is becoming the bride itself, is becoming the center of attention. Certainly in the indie games, you do not see a lot of games on itch.io that are super duper mathy, in my experience. People are like, I don't have time for that. And if I want to play a mathy game, I got XCOM on the computer. I got that on the Steam. And so it's like, let's get into the right brain. Let's do vibes and woo. And what we've got here is structured vibes and woo. We've got chaos, but it's in a card deck, so that there are suits of chaos where it's like, oh, this piece is a relationship and this piece is an item, and so they are easier to handle and manipulate to kaleidoscope together your story about characters with no tact and players with no tactics. And yes, I did prepare that phrase ahead of time.
I was about to ask.
Yeah.
You know, the difference between a wit and a writer is that a wit can think of something pretty good right away, and a writer can think of something great several days afterwards.
Let's read Escalier.
I mean, I think this edition of Fiasco is brilliant. It is not everything for everyone, but it does what it set out to do brilliantly. I think there should be something in the rule book, so like as long as you have some sort of you're comfortable, all the players are comfortable with making up new ideas and characters on the fly. This is a game where you can't be wrong, like a little sort of preface saying like it's okay, you can't fail at this game. You go for it, that kind of thing. That kind of
you
advice.
Want to see some coaching on improv.
Yeah, because like I said, I feel like there are going to be some people that hit that like a brick wall, in some cases, like not even want to play it. Yeah.
There was some television show where it had a gag about, yeah, I remember how my dad taught me to swim. And it's a flashback to his father, played by Stacy Keach, picking him up under the armpits when he's like 8 years old, throwing him into the deep end of the pool and yelling, "Don't be a pussy."
Mm-hmm.
And so you want something gentler than Stacy Keach yelling that at you when you're going to try improv.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Ross.
Mm-hmm.
A little coaching and encouragement would have gone a long way.
If you buy this game, you read through it, you may not like think about that like issue when you're like, hey, let's go try out this new game. But like reading like, oh, well, maybe, Bob hates making things up and, that kind of thing. So like, let's not ask Bob because Bob will freak out. The other issue being, of course, using cards is a great idea for the tabletop, but it does make it a little more awkward to run this kind of game online, which is an issue. Yeah. Like there are some RPGs now. There are a lot of RPGs, storytelling games use cards now as integral elements in the game.
I'm sure you could set this up on Roll20 if you.
Oh, sure, that's the thing.
I believe it is on Roll20.
Let's look.
Yeah,
let's look.
My edition, I believe, comes with a leaflet that says "Play Fiasco on Roll20."
But again, that's getting to be a skill issue. Like, I don't want to have to learn Roll20 or get players to learn Roll20.
And if you pick this up off the shelf in Waterstones or in Target, you're going, what the hell is Roll20?
Yeah,
got a 20-sided die. That's those D&D freaks.
Those horrible gatekeepers who told me I was doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm. So it's a minor issue, but like, there's a good number of indie games that I have like looked at, and like, well, I don't want to run this with the people I know or like the people that are in my town, right, as an in-person game. But I do know some people online who would love to try this game, and like, well, it has so many of these elements that I can't really easily bring it online. A lot of very like there's and so this is not unique to Fiasco. So and it's a very minor
Fiasco will sell through its many copies and will present a slick UX online version at some point, and we'll play that and be like, wow, this is really good, and Jason Morningstar will live in a castle made of money.
We can
right?
Help. He definitely deserves it with this.
I was about to say, he's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
And prodigiously talented. Mind you, many role-playing games are also lovely people and prodigiously talented, so...
Lovely guy. There are many lovely guys, prodigiously talented and poor.
Yes,
so
eating
so
noodles.
let's hope for money for Jason Morningstar and that he learns not to use the future conditional texts.
One thing, one of our questions is why people play it that way. And I do want to sort of consider the idea of like a game like most role-playing games are like heroic narratives, right? Like a band of protagonists overcoming great odds to do a thing, or dealing with some sort of difficulty. And this is a game that is the inverse of that. This is about horribly flawed people doing mostly horrible things, and either being justly punished for it or getting away with it, which is even worse in a lot of ways.
I think you can play it. You can play it as full farce, or you can play it as, farce with heart.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were talking about why do people play this, and I'm flashing back to a scene from Killing It with the good-natured, benevolent Jillian G yelling, "No, no, no, I wasn't stealing drugs from this corpse. I was just trying to touch his dick." And
are you doing a British accent again, Greg?
No, that one was Australian.
Okay.
It was genuinely
almost.
Australian.
Let's say Australian. Let's say almost.
Yeah.
But that's the character, James. And it's so funny. And your Fiasco game that I listened to was so funny.
Mm-hmm.
And the game where I played, where my character rolls up to her lover's house and outs him for their affair to his wife, is so funny.
Mm-hmm. But I think the key in our game, at least, was especially because everyone at the table wasn't afraid to twist the knife. And I think that's sort of the key to it, especially for our own character. Like I remember playing my character and being like, someone suggested that I found, drugs that someone was using for a cat breeding thing, and I mistake them for performance enhancing drugs. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's horrible. I'll do it. That's great. And like, which is the exact opposite of like most role playing games. He's like, I'm making this plucky little dude, and he's got big hopes and a dream, and I want to see what happens when he goes out in the world when something bad happens to him. Be like, oh no, not little Blorbo, please don't. Oh no, Blorbo got a critical hit, and oh no, Blorbo ain't pretty no more. Like, but in this one, it's like, Blorbo's messed up, and it's hilarious.
I was hoping, I knew it was unlikely, but I was hoping that the scene where you showed those drugs to your friend at the gym, they would be like, oh, somebody's catnipping.
Yeah, oh, that would be good.
If you're going to start nipping, you got to be careful to stay oxygenated, or your brain will undergo oxygen death.
Mm-hmm. But I am, now that I think about it, it is intriguing that in most role-playing games, I'm rooting for my player character, and this is the exact opposite. And I think that's something to note.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few. I mean, Paranoia, perhaps, but again, you want to succeed in Paranoia. Cthulhu, you want to succeed. You will admit that your death is likely to be funny, and when it comes to that, you might engineer it in such a way that it is. But you still want to do well. There are very, very few games where you set out to give the character that you're in control of a bad time. And therefore, when bad things happen to the character, it doesn't impact on you. You don't get, when the character gets bullied unjustly, you don't get that sense of righteous indignation. Mm-hmm. You roll with it and you go, oh, right, well, I can use this as a motivation point. I can, in the next scene, I'm going to do something about that. And it'll probably be very stupid. And I think by now, I'm not going to say everybody is familiar with Coen Brothers movies, but the kind of people who read books and play games like Fiasco definitely are, and know the tropes and know the structures, and will get a kick out of playing this kind of character. And you could probably do a pretty good Wes Anderson game out of this as well. Yeah. The stakes would probably be lower because they tend to be in Wes Anderson. But you could, I'm trying to think one in specific.
I just want to recover my childhood dollhouse.
Mm-hmm. I would love to do The Life Aquatic. I think you could do a really good kind of dueling submariners, making rival documentaries about stuff. I think it, again, could be hysterically funny, particularly if you grew up on the films of Jacques Cousteau or that kind of thing. But that tone, it captures a very particular tone. And I'm not saying just the Coen Brothers or just Wes Anderson or that sort of thing. It's almost an indie cinema vibe in a way that I can't think of another role-playing game that does that, because it's essentially a generic system. It is worth making that point again. Yes, it comes with the 3 packs in the second edition, 4 packs in the original. You can download or pay what you want, loads of free sets for first.
Or pay for nice printed versions. There's like...
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I remember playing the one on the like 1930s steamship, and it's like, oh, and one of you's a Nazi spy. And
yeah, there's loads and loads of variations. You can have an awful lot of fun with this. But yeah, that thing of we're distanced from the player characters in the same way that distanced from characters in a movie or in a TV series. We may feel we kind of like them, but quite often something will happen. We go, oh, maybe we shouldn't have liked them. Oh, now bad things are happening to them, and we quite enjoy that.
Yeah.
And that's very much the vibe.
Maybe it's also because in Fiasco, one of the things we haven't mentioned, or one of the mechanics, is every player has their own main character. Also, all the backs of the playset cards have names on them, and it suggests you use those to make your names, which I like.
That is lovely.
Which is a really nice touch, very elegant, very efficient. But one thing you can do is you can make up new characters, minor characters for various scenes, shopkeepers, other family members of characters, and other people can role play them, but they're not like owned by one character, owned by one player, like your own player character. So you can create, draw up these supporting cast members as needed to make a point. And I know in our playthrough, we would often make up these minor characters and really use them to drive in certain points to emphasize, some dramatic irony or something like that. But that was also, and so that's again also emphasizing the improv skill. So if like 2 players are having a scene where they're talking at a coffee shop, another player could interject, aha, the rude barista, is going to spit in your coffee, because you didn't tip them or whatever. As a minor little note, or something like that. I really do like that mechanic because it adds a lot of flexibility. And if you have a great playing group where everyone trusts each other and knows each other's what you're going for, people can like that brainstorming thing where people are building on each other's ideas, and that's when it really catches fire. And I think we did that in our actual play, but that requires again sort of like a sort of background in that kind of stuff to start juggling those ideas and then going back and forth with them.
I'm just looking at, I'm going through the Fiasco expansions, and then I saw that they did Starcrossed, the one that James was so upset ripped off of Dread. Huh?
Yes.
But yeah, I'm looking at, so they've got 8 expansions plus something called Build a Fiasco, which I don't know if that's an actual expansion or not. But I'm like, okay, so these are $15.
Like Mad
so
Libs.
That's a nice price point where it's like, oh yeah, this probably cost $1 to print, and we're selling it for 15. But at the same time, it's not, like buying, I don't know, a full-on set of minis. So it's
well, yeah, that's a pittance for a miniature. Like
a pittance for a miniature gamer.
Well, I can get you 2 orcs for that, 2 basic orcs like that. That's
2 orcs. I got 2 orcs for you here, man. You gotta take these 2 orcs. In the original Fiasco, I'm trying to remember if it was open where just anybody could throw up a Fiasco setting, and they're like, yeah, publish your own Fiasco stuff. Move on.
I'm not sure. They were releasing one a month, which I think were free on their website.
Yeah, they were very easy to assemble. It's just a series. In first edition was a series of tables and like some ideas.
Right. Well, and the cards would not be that much harder because you don't need art for them like a Magic the Gathering card. I'm wondering if, is this one of these things where it's like, oh yeah, anybody who wants could do a Fiasco deck, or if they're
usually like there's at least one piece of like
home.
Cover art for it, right? Like
yeah.
So,
I mean, one piece of cover art is fine, but
I mean the main thing is the logistical. You want to have the nice deck of cards because people want the thing, right? Like they want the So I don't know, because again, like I borrowed my copy from a friend who backed the Kickstarter, and he had like 4 expansion decks. Yeah,
each of these $15 ones is 2 decks.
Mhm.
So that's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's not a bad price, actually.
It is not a bad price at all. I withdraw any snark.
Well, I also like that
Okay.
Fiasco expanded beyond like the modern contemporary like small caper and petty criminality, because in the core box they have one of them is Dungeon Slayers, which is like a set of fantasy tropes, so you can do. I really want to do that as my next one. Oh, you don't like scuzzy fantasy stuff, Greg?
I don't know, man.
All right.
I don't know. It feels like an unnecessary homage to something that it's like, okay, this is already the core of our creative galaxy. Does the most creative thing in this need to tip its hat and bow down 3 times to the howling idiot god at the center of gaming? I don't know.
I was going to say, it's Dungeons and Dragons style fantasy as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a melange. It's all the tropes in there together, and there's dungeons in there. And if I do have a criticism, it's that it feels, the whole game, in the box form, feels very American. You get the D&D style fantasy, and then you get the small town America one, the suburban America, and then you get one that's basically set in a mall, which is a very, very American setting. And obviously, though, if that's a style of cinema that you're trying to emulate, fine. But for something that ought to be so beautifully generic and almost universal, it does feel, and I'm not sure if Jason and his co-designers on it were aware of this, it does feel very American in setting. Whereas
let me throw out sort of my response when people were telling us, wow, Unknown Armies is incredibly American. And I'm like, how would you like it better if these 2 American guys who live in America and grew up in America decided they were going to write a game all about Spain?
Yeah.
How good of a job would we do at that?
Jonathan Tweet did Over the Edge, Alamaha, and it's a work of genius.
But that's not Spain. That's Alamara.
It is, but it feels European, or it feels it feels Mediterranean. It feels caught in the cross current between Southern Europe and North Africa. He does a brilliant job of capturing that tone. Whether some of it comes from Burroughs, I don't know. But a good designer can do that. Also, some of the people who design.
The glove's been thrown down.
I realize also that Guy Ritchie would also be another inspiration for Fiasco, like especially his earlier bloke films.
And people, Graham Walmsley designed sets for the original Fiasco. There are European designers who have worked within this milieu.
Oh yeah, you can 1,000,000%. I mean, once you learn the Fiasco language, I'm like, it would not take me long to throw together a Fiasco deck. I suspect you could do an Unknown Armies Fiasco deck, and it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I do want to say this. I actually have just realized this as we were talking about this. I recently saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie that came out earlier this year, and thinking back to it,
So was it great, Ross?
It was funny. It was entertaining. I was entertained by it. It was way better than all previous cinematic D&D endeavors.
It surmounted that high bar.
Yeah, it did. It miraculously somehow it beat Jeremy Irons' performance in the.
Poor Jeremy. Oh God,
even better than Mazes and Monsters.
Yeah, quite a bit actually. I have seen that, but.
A friend of mine recently re-released that on DVD. On Blu-ray.
I saw it when it first came out on TV.
You win.
With Tom Hanks.
The thing is, though, you could better replicate the events of the D&D movie with Fiasco's Dungeon Slayer playset than you could with 5th Ed D&D. Like, and it's not even close. Like, it is by far, like, the story beats, like, the main characters are like a bard who never uses any bardic powers, and a barbarian. They start out in prison, they break out, they get into shenanigans, they have to pull off heists. Like,
they have history.
Yeah. And it's all about that. So, like, it's so there's clearly, like, you could do, I think you could do
I feel like I'm like, Ross, wow, I talk a lot of shit on this podcast, and you're usually the one who, like just now, drags us back to from the brink into the realms of sanity, but here you've just dropped a bomb in the sewage line.
No, I mean, it's there's so many exceptions to the D&D rules. Like, it's just like none of the characters follow any of the progression of of how D&D works, at least in 5th edition rules is written. And I don't think anyone would argue with that if they saw the movie and knew the rules. But, like, yeah, Fiasco would be a good fit for it.
Yeah, and Fiasco is, I mean, it's explicitly cinematic. It's explicitly trying to model cinematic tropes and structure. Structure. And harking back to the Will Wheaton tabletop session, one of the players in that was John Rogers, who I believe was the showrunner on Leverage.
Yes.
If we're talking about capers and stuff like that, a guy who, has that style of in his case, TV making absolutely down. I think there's a very natural feed. And I think, I mean, it's also worth saying, as a story set, as with some of the card sets that we were talking about in the card episode, fantastic inspiration. If you're a writer, the stuff that's in here, you're writing in a particular genre or particular type of setting, this stuff's gold dust for sparking ideas, whether you want to play it and then write some of that stuff down or just leafing through the card sets and using those to trigger your, as Greg says, your left brain associations. It's a in the same, a bunch of storytelling games are used for this. Once Upon a Time is used for this, but this is really, because it's explicitly designed for cinematic style storytelling. It's really useful for that sort of thing.
But yeah, so it's, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably used to improvising and coming up with things on the fly, and doing some role playing. In which case, I cannot recommend this game enough. If the idea of playing, anything from Fargo to No Country for Old Men appeals to you, I think this is the game for you. I mean, there's No Country for Old Men. The whole movie ceases that there is no people get whatever endings they get based on random chance, right? Like, that's the main point of the movie, especially at the end. So in that case, it's very thematically Fiasco. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun game, and it's obviously very much a one-shot game. It is specifically designed to be played in a couple hours. No campaign mode, and that's the beauty of it.
The Great Fiasco Campaign would itself be a fiasco of incalculable dimensions.
I do kind of want to make my own Fiasco playset of based on a big Warhammer tournament, because I really wanted to, hey, I'm orking over here, I get you need 2 orcs for that, I really do want the scuzzy kind of merchants and players and those kind of marginal characters at a big.
Oh my god, the Gen Con Fiasco place.
Oh no, not that big, like a regional like
like a little regional. The Gen Con one would be good too.
That's a different vibe though. Like, this is the stakes are too high at Gen Con. You need something lower stakes.
Here we go, James, and the one you should do is smoke-filled Tory backrooms.
Oh god.
No, local politics, not national. Local politics, yes.
City
absolutely.
council. Yeah.
I was thinking parish council, possibly.
Oh
Yes, but that kind of thing. But yeah, after 2 hours, it's one and done, and 2 hours, it kind of outstays its welcome, not least because the characters you've created are not people you particularly want to spend a lot of time with. But
and they're probably dead or in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to watch a car crash for an hour, but when you're driving by that brief time, it's irresistible.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening to this episode. Our next episode, we are going to be talking about experience points, which is an interesting topic. Many role-playing games have them, and they all treat them a little differently. And so we'll talk about some of that.
What is an experience point?
Yeah, what's the deal with experience points?
What's the point of experience?
So, new episode title. And then only after that, we have 2 more episodes after that before our actual play. So we're getting close to the end of the season.
It's Traveler, right? Is one of those.
Yes,
two.
Traveler and then Pendragon.
Pendragon.
Yeah.
Pendragon, yeah, okay. Is it Pendragon or Pendragon?
Pendragon, I'm pretty sure.
No, I will go with the UK pronunciation there.
I've never heard it as
okay,
Pendragon.
because England owns King Arthur now. All right, sure, whatever, man.
I think it's the other way around. I think King Arthur owns England.
Oh, yeah, that is how that works.
We were just hoping he comes out from under the hill sometime soon and puts the... Yeah, this is not a subject for the podcast. Another time.
A tangent too
Greg
far.
Ross and James talk about politics.
Are you in the mood for 60 minutes of crying and screaming?
No. Yeah, there's no podcast to cover that, right? Don't answer that question. Big special thanks to Brownie Davis, who is a good friend of mine. He attended my wedding and backed the Kickstarter at a level to get a special thanks. Thank you so much. You were a great friend. I hope to see you again sometime soon, and I hope you're doing well.
And I am offering my special thanks to the backer known simply as Greedy. You know why.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.